counts as the required training to operate a summer food service program. We thank you all for being here, and hopefully you'll learn something today. Even if you've been here a couple of times, hopefully you'll learn something new. There were just a couple minor changes, but hopefully it'll go quickly and we'll enjoy our time together today. So let me go on to the next slide. Second here. All right. Okay. So I am Jessica Fermansky, and I'm a program specialist with Nebraska Department of Education, and I am our summer food service program lead. So you will be hearing from myself today, as well as Susan Gracie. And Susan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Susan Gracie. I'm also a program specialist with the Department of Ed, and I'm new to this team, but excited to get involved with summer feeding.
All right. Thanks, Susan. And just to let you all know, we will likely turn off our cameras just because we have several monitors that are up, and in order to somewhat not be a huge distraction, we'll probably shut off our cameras, but I wanted to definitely put a face to the name first of all as we get started today. And on this first screen, you'll see our summer squad. So these are all of the program specialists, and of course, Katie, our program administrator. She is also on our summer squad. So you may see any of us in the field, but this is most of us that operate or do reviews for summer food service program. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and start this recording. Give me one sec here. Okay. All right, so this is just we'll begin with some housekeeping items. If you would like to have your camera on, that's great. We love seeing you folks. If you want to turn it off because it's distracting, we totally understand that as well. It's your choice. Please mute your microphone to avoid feedback and, of course, background noises and distractions. And then if you have any questions or you think of something as it comes up, feel free to just drop us a little note in the chat box. Hopefully you can all see your little taskbar up there with the chat function, and you can utilize that, and we will take a few chat breaks here and there to check on some of those questions. Or you can also feel free to just unmute your microphone. And if we're at the end of a section, we'll typically ask if you have any questions, and we would take questions at that time. So please feel free to do that as well. And then please stay logged in until the end. There is an attendance form to complete, and that is how we know that everyone attended their training and how we know who to send the continuing education certificates to. So please make sure that you stay logged in all the way to the end. We will give you plenty of time to fill out that form when we get there, and make sure that your attendance is counted towards that you attended this training. Okay. And then, of course, like I said, this training is being recorded, and hopefully it is because I think I have it on recorded, but okay. So moving on. All right, so we have a jam-packed agenda today. We will do our best to get through all of this as quickly as possible, but please know that there's just a lot on the table today to discuss. And so we will be reviewing all of these things. We will start with the program requirements. We will get into application and claims. We'll talk a bit about site monitoring and documentation. Susan will go into detail about meal requirements and some program flexibilities, as well as program costs and procurement. And then we will wrap up our day discussing rural non-congregate. And that is just for those folks that will be operating a rural non-congregate site, or if you're even interested in it, I recommend that you stay on to view that part of the training. We will give a chance for attendance prior to that, though, so that you folks that are not doing any sort of non-congregate, so that you don't have to stick around. So we'll get moving here. All right, so we're going to start our training off with the program requirements. All right, so begin, if you're looking for any of these USDA guidance, we did not come up with these on our own. Of course, these are all part of the CFRs, the federal guidance, and you can look at any of these two CFRs, the 200.400, 200.302, and 200.303, discuss in specific lots of detail about program requirements. Of course, we want to make sure that you're having effective and efficient operation through sound practices, because of course, these are federal funds, right? And every cent must be accounted for. So we want to make sure that there are internal controls and procedures necessary for proper administration of those federal funds. Because remember, they're going to be asking us where every cent went, and we need to account for that just like you all do. And then, of course, reasonable assurance of compliance, that you're following the regulations that are set in place by USDA to operate the program. And then safeguard those funds, making sure that they are used only for the intended purpose of providing meals to the free and reduced children in eligible areas. So a lot of regulation guidance there, but just so that we cover all of our bases. And program requirements. One of the main things we start with is, how do I know that I am eligible to operate this program? So we talk a lot about area eligibility. So we can serve meals to all children ages 1 to 18 years of age in eligible areas. And an eligible area means that at least 50% of children eligible for free and reduced price meals can either be determined by school meals claim data or census data that is available from the SFSP area eligibility map. And if you're using that area eligibility map, you want to make sure that you're using the exact site address to determine the location's eligibility. All right, and what does that eligibility map look like? Well, here is a screenshot of that. So in this instance, anything that is in the green area is area eligible, and anything that's in that gray shaded area is not area eligible. So this is what that eligibility map will look like. You'll type in your exact address, and it will tell you whether or not that site or that specific location is area eligible to operate an open site. And we'll get into a little bit about site types. So there are several site types. One that we discuss most probably is an open site. So that is where you can operate in an area eligible location and serve meals to all children ages 1 to 18 for free. So you're just open for all children to come in and get the free meal at your site. There's also an option of a closed enrolled site. And this is a site where you provide free meals to children that are enrolled in an activity program at the site, where at least half of the participants are eligible for free and reduced meals, or they're in an eligible location. So they've been, you've determined via the map that they are, that this site is located in an eligible location. So typically with a closed enrolled site, there's a roster, there's enrollment, there's specific activities that children are involved in on a daily basis. So that's a little bit different than an open site where anyone can just come. And then we also have camps. So camps are a little bit different because they receive reimbursement for only the meals that are served to children who are eligible for free or reduced price meals. So it might be a mixed bag there at a camp where some kiddos will receive that free meal, and then other kids might be paying for their meal. So, or maybe you are providing you have another funding source for those meals if you're giving them to all the children. So camps are just a little bit different. And if you have specific questions about what qualifies as a camp or a closed enrolled or an open site, please let us know. We'd be happy to answer any of those questions. All right. So one of the things that we want to make sure that everybody knows is that you must advertise open sites. And so all sponsors are required to advertise those open sites. Of course, NDE will send a public release, but we also want to make sure that you are advertising those, whether it's on a Facebook page, or maybe you have a newspaper or some sort of way to get the message out to your community to advertise those open sites. Even schools that don't operate summer food service program are still required to advertise summer food service program, in case there's a site that might be close to a school, or a close community that kiddos can go and visit an open site to get their free meal. Of course, we want to make sure that all of your site rules are posted in a visible location. And we have an example, I think, in the next slide about what that looks like. And then also we have NDE resources and promotional materials. So we have, and I've sent out some of the correspondence regarding this, but we do have some resources, some bookmarks and postcard things. We've got some big banners, big vinyl banners that you can use to promote your SFSP site. So that's just a quick reminder. And then on this next slide, you'll see what that advertisement can look like. So we use that sun messaging, that summer nutrition programs for kids, where you see that big sun. It's a really bright and welcoming sign, a good message for SFSP, but it just says where the site is. It gives the address, it gives the dates and the times of operation. And in this example, they've got a breakfast time and a lunch time. And then right next to that, they have all their site rules. So you just want to make sure that everything is listed out on your site rules in all of your open sites. All right, so then we move into staff training. And for those of you that are here today, you're doing a good job of starting off some of that training so that you can take all of the information that you're learning here today and pass that on to everyone that's going to be at your site. So on this slide, you're going to see a few examples of some guidance materials that can help you when you're looking at doing some of that training. We've got the Summer Food Service Program Administration Guide. We also have a couple guides out there for sponsors. Specifically, there's a nutrition guide and then that site supervisor guide. So these are all things that you can find on our website in the SFSP section of the NDE website, and you can find all of these there. So if you ever have any questions on specifics, these guides are really helpful in finding some of those answers. Of course, you're always welcome to reach out to us, but typically this is what we're looking at as well. All right, so when training staff, of course, staff training is going to be a huge part of the program requirements. You want to make sure that the team members are aware of the program's purpose, right? So they must understand the importance of record keeping, that there's a meal pattern that must be followed and documented, which site visits must be completed and by whom, and any reporting procedures necessary for the sponsor and its sites, right? Because you do all this work, and then if you forget to send in a claim, I'm guessing you're going to have some administrative folks that are not too happy with you, right? So be a summer meals champion. Provide children with nutritious meals. A lot of times these meals can be paired with activities that are fun for kiddos, that kind of entices them to come to your site and exercises their bodies and brains. A lot of kiddos might be on their own in the summer, so it's nice to let them have a place to go, have an adult to speak to, or other children, just to keep them learning over the summer. And of course, we always want to talk about civil rights. We want to make sure that civil rights is part of your staff training, and that anybody that has any sort of part in summer food service program, that they receive that civil rights training. I think we have the next slide here. It goes into the specifics. On our website, under SFSP training, you will see the civil rights specific training. You can click on that and go through that with your staff. It will also offer a continuing education certificate after you've completed that training. So everyone needs to make sure that they receive civil rights training if they have any part in the SFSP operation at your site. Yep, so all staff with duties in SFSP must complete the civil rights training. So that includes folks that are maybe taking meal counts, folks that are cooking the meal, folks that are helping package up a meal. You want to make sure that everyone, even if they submit the claim, we want to make sure that everyone receives civil rights We talked a little bit about civil rights training, and that you can find that on our website. But there's also you must visibly post the "And Justice for All" poster at all of your meal service sites, and this includes even those grab and go options for the non-congregates, as well as folks that are coming into your cafeteria, or maybe you are at a park. Maybe your site is at a park. We want to make sure that you have that "And Justice for All" poster visibly available to all participants of the program, making sure that they know what to do if they were to encounter some sort of civil rights issue and need to file a complaint. All right, so again, we really stress this. All staff with duties in SFSP must complete civil rights training. So we talk about the bookkeeper. So maybe that's an administrative person, somebody that is handling the claims. We want to make sure that they've received that civil rights, as well as the food service director, right? That seems like an obvious one. And point of service staff. So those folks that are counting up those meals as the kiddos go through and marking that little tally sheet. We want to make sure they've received civil rights. The cooks, even a dishwasher. So somebody that comes in and washes the dishes and helps out in the kitchen, we would want to make sure that they've received that civil rights training. All right, and so if you're going to do the training, you've got to document all the training, right? Because documentation or it didn't happen. So we want to make sure that you've got your training log so that you can identify the topics that you discussed during training, make sure that you've recorded down that date and all of the team members who attended. I think in the handouts that I sent, I included this training certification example, just so you kind of know what that looks like. And just remember, training is a tool for your team. We want to make sure that everybody has all of the tools that they need to operate the program the way that it's intended. And so just make sure that you're using that training for your team. All right, so program requirements. So attend training. So everyone after today can at least check something off their list, right? You'll be taking all of this training to train your staff now. So you're going to be training them on on the program as well as civil rights. You'll be looking for eligible meal service sites. So I know a lot of you have already been in contact with me to make sure that that you have sites that are eligible, whether you're wanting to to operate an open site, or maybe you have a couple closed enrolled sites or a non-congregate site. So I've heard from a lot of you working through how to determine eligibility. One thing that you want to make sure is that you also monitor those sites. So there's lots of monitoring that goes on to make sure that everything's operating the way that you trained the staff and the way that it's intended. Record retention, make sure that you're keeping all the SFSP records for the current year plus the 3 previous years. Of course, the program requirements, you're serving free meals to children ages 1 to 18 years. And you cannot serve meals to only summer school students. So that's one thing when you're looking at eligibility. It's great if you have a summer school program going on at your school. Just make sure that that is an open site so that not only are you serving those summer school students that are receiving academic credit, but you're also open to other community children that can come in and enjoy a free meal as well. All right. I'm going to do a quick chat check-in just to make sure that I'm answering any questions. Looks like we have a question about when will the materials be sent out? Oh, I think you mean for the promotional materials. I think I've closed that at the end of April. I think that the promotional material form will close at the end of April, and we'll get those out just as soon as possible. It will kind of depend. We're at the mercy of our printing folks, but hopefully it will be a quick turnaround. We can get those out as soon as possible. But I would hope by May we would get those out. And I'm sorry, yeah, you submitted for them several weeks ago. You won't receive them until that form is closed because we can't submit the total to the print shop until that is closed. Is the banner the same as last year? Yes. We are still using the Sun messaging that we received from USDA. And I was told that if our people have done civil rights at the beginning of the school year for SFSP. So yeah, so if you have an annual civil rights and you have the same folks that work at maybe a school or at your organization and they've already done their annual training for civil rights, that that qualifies just fine. Just make sure that you've kept track of that and that you have those certificates for that training so that we know that when that civil rights was training was completed, the date, who attended, and that it was in fact civil rights training and they have their certificate. So yep, as long as they've completed that annually, that's fine. This, completing civil rights is something that maybe you have folks that don't work during the school year, or we have a lot of nonprofits. So we just really stress that you have to complete that civil rights training. Okay, so at the end, if you have several people that have joined your Zoom group, that's okay, because at the end when we put up the attendance form, then you will fill out a separate one for each person. So yes, it's fine if there's several people in the same room. Just make sure that when you fill out that attendance form, each person fills it out on their own. Let's see, I think that looks like that's all of the questions in the chat right now. Does anybody want to come off of mute if you have any questions about anything I've discussed so far? No? Okay, well, feel free to continue putting those questions in that chat. We appreciate all the questions that you have, and I'll continue moving on here. All right. Application and claims. So the deadline for the online application in CNP is May 1st. And I know what you're thinking, gosh, that's only a couple weeks away, and that seems really, really early. It is really early, but this gives us a good chance at the state agency to be able to go through all of those applications. We can ask any questions. Sometimes there's things that have been missed or we need to request for clarification. And if we stick to that May 1st deadline, that makes sure that because this application has to be approved before you can start service, it just gives plenty of time to make sure that we can meet that deadline. So if you can get those applications in just as soon as possible, one of the questions in the application is what date did you attend training and who was it? So now that you've done that, you can get in there and get this application submitted. So this is kind of what we were waiting on. The application is open in CNP, and now that we are attending training today, you can get in there and get some of that completed and get those submitted, but just give us plenty of time to review those and get those approved. And one thing I want to mention with that, especially if you are operating a rural non-congregate site, you also have an integrity plan application that will be submitted. And so in order, we will not submit, or excuse me, we will not approve your CNP application, which means you wouldn't be able to submit any claims until that integrity plan has been completed. So that's why we just give ourselves plenty of time to make sure that all of our ducks are in a row and we can get you on the way to getting everything approved. All right. Okay, so what does that application look like? So I'm sure if you are a school, you've probably been in CNP before, or if you've operated summer food service program before, you know what this looks like in CNP. And it's this is our computer program that tracks all of our sites and processes our claims, and really everything to do with how we track all of our programs at Nutrition Services. So this is what that screen looks like. There's several items that you will complete, and we've put them in order for you. We wanted to really stress this year the importance in the order of completion. And in the application guide, we also it goes in that order. But the reason we stress it so much is because if you go in and you start at the sponsor application and then immediately go to budget detail, which it looks like on the screen, that's the way you should go if you're just following down. But once you get into that budget detail, if you haven't completed that site application at the bottom yet, then it really kind of messes things up, because the budget is all dependent on the numbers that you put in for your site application. So we really want to stress that everybody follows this order of completion. So starting with that sponsor application at the top, and then if you have a food production facility, you would complete that. Most people don't, so you probably would skip that. Heading on to number 3, get that site application done, that bottom, all of those site applications. And then head on back up to that budget, because now it has some numbers to draw on. And so you can complete that budget and then that checklist summary if you have any items there. And then as soon as you get all of that, then you're able to submit for approval. That comes to us. We begin our review process, and then we try to get that either returned to you with corrections or approved as soon as possible, so we can all move on to our service times. All right. One section of the sponsor application that we always want to mention is that UEI, or that unique entity ID number, that will need to be updated. Typically, this has to be updated every year, and sometimes it happens in SFSP because folks haven't looked at these applications since last year, since we operate a real short calendar for summer. So I encourage everyone just to look at that UEI number and make sure that your registration is current. One thing to note here is that the date that you're entering the registration is the date that it was completed or renewed. So not a future date, not when you will renew again in a year. It's the date that it was renewed. And we are unable to approve an application with an old or expired renewal date. So make sure that you check out that little section of the sponsor application and make sure that that is current. And I also want to mention, I think maybe we talk about this a little bit in the next slide, is to never pay for your UEI number or renewal. There are a lot of companies out there that will offer, we can help you for a fee, and we can do this and that. It is free. It is free to acquire, and it is free to renew this UEI. So sometimes when it's about time for you to renew, if you have been the registered person at sam.gov, you might get some of these sort of spam or phishing emails trying to get you to sign up for something to pay for, but you do not need to pay for anything. If you have any questions about renewing your UEI, please let us know. You will receive a reminder when that UEI is near expiration. You may have already renewed it for the school year and added it to that application, but you might not have done it for this specific SFSP application. So make sure that you check those dates. All right. So this is the site application section of CNP. And on this section, you'll see that all of those sites that have the green check mark, those are approved site applications. And those are ones that you will be using for this year. So if you know that you are going to be using a site, you will go in, you will edit that site, and those are the ones that you will submit. If you are not going to be using a site, even though it's still going to be listed on there, just don't go into that one. You can just leave that one alone. It will just sit there, and it will not prevent you from submitting the application packet as a whole. But I just want to make sure that you're going to maybe see some sites on there that you might not be using this year, and that is okay. And you might see, let's see here. The ones with the green check mark, I just want to make sure that those ones are the ones that you will be using. And if you have ones that have a red arrow and you're not using them, that is fine. All right, so any park sites, if you have a park site, you need to plan for some inclement weather. Of course, we live in Nebraska, and we never know what that will look like. It might be beautiful 1 minute and then tornado the next. So make sure that if you are operating a site that's at a park, that you will indicate if it's an outdoor or mobile site, so yes or no. And then in number 40 of that application, you will indicate your plan for serving meals during that inclement weather. So maybe if it is raining, you say we will be under the gazebo, or there is just excessive heat, so we go to the community building that's across the street. Just make sure that you post that folks know what's going to happen. Or if you say, we in inclement weather, we just have nowhere to go, so there will be no meals on that day. That's fine too, as long as you post it so that folks know what to do in the inclement weather situations, if you're a park site. All right, so average daily participation. So this is an area of the site application that you will complete per site, and it lets us know just what your average daily participation is expected to be. We recommend utilizing, if you operated last year, utilize your 2025 participation as your guide. That's going to give you a pretty good idea of what folks are coming to your site, how many. And it tells us the maximum number of meals that are served at a site. Now, just because you put something in this site at this time, is it set in stone? Absolutely not. You're just giving us a best guess at this time based on last year's participation. You can put in about what you think. And then if that adjusts, or maybe you are just really popular this year and word's gotten around that you guys just have great meals, then you can increase that ADP at any time. And what you'll do is you'll just go into that site application, you'll adjust that number accordingly to what you're seeing, and you'll resubmit it to us and we will approve it. And you'll just let us know, we just had a great participation this year. We've increased our maybe our outreach. And so we're seeing a lot of folks that are coming to our site. All right. And this ADP does help to reduce waste. It improves integrity so that we don't have a bunch of leftover meals, since those are not allowable costs. So that's something to be thinking about when you're deciding on what your ADP is and how many meals you're going to be making. And ADP continued. So it tells us how many children are served on an average day. ADP value is used to set each site's cap. So you have a maximum daily average number of meals, and this affects your claim. And we regularly assess ADP and revise site application as needed. Like I said, you'll just go in, you'll submit that revision, you'll increase the ADP, and then maybe you might have to decrease it. Maybe you just had a really, a booming month in June, and then by July, maybe numbers have fallen off. And so you can always adjust that number up and down as you need to. And that is in the site application. All right, so a site cap indicates the maximum number of SFSP meals served to children at each meal. And again, this is in the site application of CMP. So it cannot exceed 110% of the ADP. So if you have an ADP that is 100, your site cap can be no more than 110. And we see this a lot in those site applications. And this is probably one of the number one reasons that your site application will be returned to you. Because if you are saying, oh, I'm going to see ADP of 100, but you put your site cap at 200, that creates a lot of problems for integrity purposes. So we will send that back and say it cannot be more than 10% of your ADP, and we will have you adjust that. Because remember, these can always they can fluctuate and adjust and be resubmitted and revised throughout the summer. So this site cap is really important, and it's something that we would send or return your site application back to you for. All right, field trips. So lots of times kiddos are going to have field trips and they maybe aren't eating those meals on site at certain sites. And so you can submit field trip requests in CMP. They must be submitted at least 24 hours before any field trip can happen. They are based on a single day field trip request. This is done in the CMP system as well. And even if you have a group of kiddos that's going out to a field trip, but you are an open site, you must still remain open to serve meals to other community children that maybe are not part of that field trip. Okay. You cannot claim any field trip meals if the site field trip is not submitted in CMP at least 24 hours prior. So please be thinking ahead at all of those field trips and make sure that you have those entered into CMP just as soon as you know about them. Dietary accommodations or special diets. So federal regulations require that accommodations, just like at schools, for special dietary needs, and the sponsor application asks you to ensure that this will take place. So every single person that's filling out this application in CMP will answer yes to number 77, because that question says, does this site anticipate the need to plan and or prepare special diets for children with disabilities? The question is always going to be yes, because you always would accommodate any child with disabilities. You must ensure that children's dietary needs are accommodated in the event that they need a meal substitute required by a medical condition. And you can use the same medical statement documentation that is used during school, and we can give those can be found on our website. We can also send those to you specifically. If you can't find them, just let us know. So just be aware that there might be some kiddos coming in with some special diet accommodations, and you are required to provide those accommodations for them. All right, claims for reimbursement. So make sure you have a plan for who is going to be responsible for those monthly claims. It'd be a real shame to do all of this great work and serve all of these meals for your community and then fail to get that claim in on time, right? So we want to know who is responsible for getting that monthly claim in. We want to make sure that those claims are submitted and accepted in CNP no later than 60 days after the last day of the month the meals were served. And honestly, a best practice, if you can do this, stick to this, mark it on your calendar, submit your claims by noon central on the 10th of each month. Because that way, if you are done with meals on, May 31st and you have that submitted, then following month by June 10th, you have more than met that 60 days. It gives us plenty of time if there are any issues with that claim, or if maybe your ADP didn't get adjusted and now the claim isn't being accepted. It just gives plenty of time to make sure that you get that claim submitted, it is accepted, and your organization gets paid on time. Okay? Make sure you know who is responsible for submitting those claims. RNC, if you have a rural non-congregate meals, those are submitted in the same CNP claim system. However, they are counted separately from congregate meals. So please do not combine those congregate and non-congregate claim numbers. So maybe, and we'll get into this a lot when we talk specifically about RNC, but I wanted to mention this specifically at this point of the training and dealing with claims. Make sure that if you have maybe you have a congregate breakfast, so you have a tally sheet, you've taken all your congregate breakfast, and then maybe kiddos take lunch to go. So you would have two separate tally sheets. One is that congregate breakfast that they had, and then they come by, they grab their lunch meal on their way out the door, and that's their non-congregate. Those are separate meals at separate times, but we want to make sure that you're not combining those congregate and non-congregate claim numbers, because it's really going to create a whole mess for you when you get into the trying to submit that claim later on. Okay. There are some SFSP claim entry hints. I am going to be updating this a little bit to make sure that I've hit all of those things for the RNC folks. So we will update that and get that on this SFSP claim entry hints and tips under the SFSP training on our website. But I just wanted to let you know, I will be updating that a little bit. So it's not imperative that you print it off now. Plus, the first time you'll likely be submitting a claim is going to be in June anyhow. So we've got a little bit of time to get that squared away. All right, so here is a question, and you can just use the chat box, or you can unmute if you want to shout it out. This is just one of our little kind of knowledge checks. So how many days after the last day of a claim month does a sponsor have to submit a claim for reimbursement? we went over this one in detail, so hopefully everybody, yep, I'm seeing a lot of right answers in here. Okay, perfect. So you guys are correct. We have 60 days. 60 days to get that claim in. I think I have another, whoops. Yep, okay. What is the order of completion for the parts of the application packet? And it looks like we already have the answer spelled out there. So you start with that sponsor application, work your way down, skip that budget at first, work your way down. If you have a food production facility, you will enter that. But if you don't, you again don't have to do that. You go onto that site application. That's where you're going to put in your ADP and your site caps and your calendar and your times of operation, all of those things in each site application, because of course each site has a separate one. Then you'll work your way back up. You'll go back to the main dashboard, work on that budget detail. All of those numbers will be in there for the budget to populate correctly. And then you'll work on your checklist summary after that. All right. What must be approved before meals served at a site are eligible for reimbursement? This is a good one. You guys remember this was, let's see if anybody has the answer yet. Site and sponsor application. Somebody got it right. Let's see. The application, the UEI, yep, which is part of the application. Good. So you guys are getting, yep, you must get that application in there. Okay, perfect. Pull up that answer, site applications and sponsor application. I think we have one more question here. When is the deadline to submit this application for 2026? I'm seeing a lot of correct answers. Everybody's got May 1st on the brain. That's good. Okay. All right. I want to go through this chat real quick because I did see a couple of questions. And if I missed yours, please just unmute and shout out. I'm going to try to find these. I think I had a question. Okay, so there are some folks that maybe are new sites that didn't operate last year. So typically we just say, just give your best guess. If you kind of can, figure out about how many folks you think in your community, or you can send out, sometimes people will send out surveys. They'll send out just a simple Google survey that says, hey, we're going to be operating a free lunch Monday through Friday at this time. How likely are you to come to our site? And kind of get a really good feel for numbers there. So that's a way that you can find out if you have not operated before, because obviously there's some reason why you decided to operate this. You thought that there was a need in your community. So let's see. Just scrolling through all these answers to see if there was. Okay, so would be serving congregate lunch and sending a non-congregate breakfast be considered hybrid? Yes, that would be considered a hybrid site. We'll get into that when we talk specifically about rural non-congregate. But yes, so if you serve a congregate lunch where kiddos come in, they come to your site, they sit down, they eat their lunch, and then that meal is of course tallied. And then you send them home with that congregate breakfast, or excuse me, with a non-congregate breakfast, then yes, that is a hybrid
Coming in here to hide.
Okay. I don't know if somebody's asking a question or if they need to mute. Did someone have a question that they unmuted for? Okay. I'll keep moving on here, because I think there might have been a couple more questions that got mixed in. Yeah, if you have a new site, please contact us and we will help you with entering that. That's kind of one of those one-off, two-off things. So if you have a specific question about a whole new site, you need to contact us. All right, I think I've answered all of the questions. If I missed your question, please re-enter it in the chat or just unmute and I'd be happy to answer that. Okay. All right, we'll move on to site monitors. So site monitors are critical to the successful operation of SFSP sites. They must be a really, really detail-oriented and organized person. They need to feel confident in the program requirements and make sure that this person is not afraid to contact NDE to clarify requirements, because sometimes that just happens where you have some questions and you're not quite sure what to do. So that's that site monitor's responsibility. Your SNP, or excuse me, your CNP application, or the application in CNP will ask that you identify this sponsor contact. So that person is considered your site monitor. They are the person that ensures that there are daily records being taken, that you have point of service meal counts. They're going to ensure that there's production records and delivery tickets being completed daily. They are also the person that's going to make sure that that the And Justice for All poster is clearly posted during all meal times. They do a lot of communicating with the sponsor if there's any problems or any corrective action that needs to happen. They identify those and then give some feedback on how to fix those problems. This person might not be on site every day. They might just be coming in, they're more administrative, or they're just coming in to check on things here and there and do those site visits. So that's what a site monitor does. And that's a little bit different than a site supervisor, because a site supervisor is somebody that is on site. They must be there every single day. So they are the person that is responsible for maintaining those daily records in compliance. They know that if there's a missing record, that they might not get to claim that, or there might be money that if it was claimed and we're missing a production record for that day, that we might have to reclaim some of those funds. This person ensures that meals are served only during the approved time. So if you say that lunch starts at 12:05, then that's when lunch begins, 12:05. They verify that meals meet the meal pattern. So they have a lot to do with setting those meals and kind of the day-to-day things that happen on site. They're looking at food safety, making sure that all of those food safety logs are completed. And they are making sure that all of the meals, I don't know, there's a typo in that, so sorry about that, guys, that all of the meals have all of the required components. So that's the little bit different between a site monitor and a site supervisor. And a site supervisor responsibilities. So of course, they're making sure that point of service meal count is completed when meals are served. They are not just counting trays and marking them off, right? Because those meal count is completed as the meals are served, as the child is taking that meal. They ensure that children are served before adults. So all children must be served before you serve an adult. They're implementing those corrective actions on site. This person is on site for the entire meal service, like we said. And failure to have a trained site supervisor at each site during meal service is a major program violation. So we want to make sure that you know that there should be a site supervisor on site at every meal. They should be identified. It should be easy for us when we arrive. For an unannounced visit, we would know exactly who that site supervisor is and what their responsibilities are. So it is a major program violation if you do not have that site supervisor on site. Pre-operational site visit. So this is going to be completed by the site monitor or some sort of administrative staff. This is part of their responsibilities. It is required, the pre-operational site visit is required for new sites, sites that have not operated in the past, and any new rural non-congregate sites. So even if you operated last year, but this year you're new to the non-congregate type of operation, you will complete, or the site monitor will complete a pre-operational site visit at any of those sites. It is required for previously operated sites that had operational issues. So if you were a site that operated last year and you needed a lot of technical assistance, let's say that the state agency was there and we provided technical assistance, that you had to complete corrective action to fix an issue, maybe we had to reclaim some funds, all of those things would be qualifications for a pre-operational site visit. If you have questions on whether or not you had problem sites last year, please let us know. We'd be happy to tell you if you are required to complete that pre-operational site visit at any of your sites. I did include that in a handout as well. So hopefully you receive those and you can review that form quickly. A site visit, we call it the first 2-week site visit. Again, this will be completed by an administrative staff or a site monitor and is required for some sites. Again, if you are a new site in 2026 or you're a new RNC site in 2026, you would complete the pre-operational site visit as well as this first 2-week site visit. If you had operational issues in the previous year, again, you're going to be completing this first 2-week visit. And also, if we have told you that you need to complete this first 2-week visit, if it's state agency directed, then you of course would complete that. You will conduct it during meal service, and it helps to identify potential problems. So some of the common identifiable potential problems that we see is inadequate documentation related to daily production records. So maybe you have production records, but maybe they're not filled out completely. That's going to be a problem. if you aren't doing production records at all. That's a huge problem. So this site visit is really just to try to find things really early on and get these site visits completed so that these problems can be fixed immediately before things get too out of hand, and then you end up with claim issues. So another thing would be inadequate documentation related to daily meal count. Sometimes we've seen where folks have already checked off some tallies based on the kids that they have, at a certain program. Oh, we know we have 20 kids today, so I went ahead and marked off 20 tally marks on that meal count sheet. That is a problem. So we would want to make sure that you're not doing that. If you've operated outside of approved meal times, again, that's an issue and a potential problem. Not counting meals at the point of service. So maybe you're counting them after everyone's eaten, or you're tray counting or something like that. And then if you've had any health inspection violations, maybe the site monitor is on site and nobody has washed their hands. That's going to be a health inspection violation. Also, if the health inspector has been there and you have multiple violations, we want to try to heat off some of those problems before they get too bad. Okay. An annual site visit. So every single site that operates will complete this site visit. It is required for all sites, and it must be done within the first 4 weeks of operation. Again, it's going to be done by an administrative or a staff or a site monitor. So this is somebody that's not necessarily on staff every day, because if you're on staff every day or on site every day, you might, kind of become used to some of these things. So somebody that's coming in from the outside to look at these things, the site monitor, they might notice different things. And that's why it's done by that person. It's going to be completed within the first 4 weeks. Again, you're going to conduct it during meal service, and it is to identify any potential problems, much like all of the problems that we just went through in that first 2-week visit. All right. Do we need to take a 5-minute break? I'm going to answer the questions in the chat. No, let's see. Can the site monitor and the site supervisor be the same person? No, they cannot. And that is because we want to make sure that the site supervisor who is on site every day is not, because you may not see things. When you're the site supervisor, you're there every day, it just becomes kind of normal to you. Whereas a site monitor is somebody's coming from the outside. They are also an administrative type person. They need to be the person that's coming in to look at the operation as a whole, identify any corrective action items, and get those fixed. So they cannot be the same person. If the site was used a couple of years ago and we are using that site this year, yes, you are considered a new site. If you did not operate last year, you are considered a new site, and you would need to do the pre-operational site visit. You would do a 2-week visit, and then you would do the 4-week visit. So you will be doing 3 visits at that site if you did not operate last year. You are considered brand new. So anybody that takes a break for a year, they are considered brand new for SFSP purposes, and you will be completing all of those site visits. Or the site monitor will be completing all of those site visits. Okay, what do we think? Do folks need a break, or do you good with us just moving on? It's been about an hour so far. Let's go. Okay. Move on. Everybody says, okay, perfect. All right. Okay, thanks, guys. We'll go ahead and just keep it moving. If you need to take a bathroom break or whatnot, go ahead, and I'll just keep this moving. All right, Susan, I'm going to hand this over to you, and I'm going to go ahead and mute my audio.
Awesome. Thank you. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, perfect. We're going to go on with the agenda and talk about the meal requirements for summer feeding program. The SFSP meal pattern chart can be found on the NDE website and in your handout packet. If you have not already done so, please take a few minutes to familiarize yourself with the SFSP meal pattern, as it is different from the NSLP meal pattern. As you can see in the chart, the milk requirements are the same as the NSLP meal pattern, requiring 1 cup or 8 ounces of milk to be served at breakfast, lunch, or supper and snack. The main difference between the NSLP meal pattern and the SFSP meal pattern includes no vegetable subgroups. As you can see in the chart, a half a cup of fruit or vegetables are required at breakfast, and 3/4 of a cup total is required for lunch or supper and at snack. The SFSP meal pattern also does not require whole grain rich products. However, if you're already purchasing whole grain rich products, we recommend you continuing to serve these products during summer feeding as well. As you can see, the grain requirements are more simple, requiring only 1 serving of grain for breakfast, lunch or supper, and snack. These items could include a slice of bread, a serving of a muffin or a roll, or a half a cup of cooked cereal or pasta. Lastly, the meat alternates require 1 ounce at breakfast and snack and 2 ounces for lunch or supper. We're going to hit each of these meal patterns going forward throughout this presentation. So just like we would, let's start off by looking at the breakfast meal pattern. Breakfast should consist of all 3 components listed in the table: milk, fruit or vegetable, and grain or bread. As mentioned previously, the SFSP meal pattern requires 1 cup of milk, a half a cup of fruit or vegetables. This can include juice as long as it's only a half cup serving, and 1 serving of grains. We recommend to serve whole fruits and vegetables, whether fresh, frozen, canned, or dried, instead of juice, because whole fruits and vegetables offer more nutrition and also help with calorie management. Additionally, serving whole grains is encouraged due to their superior nutrition content, including fiber, antioxidants, B vitamins, and iron. Let's move on to lunch and supper. Lunch and supper both are going to follow the same meal pattern. Please ensure that whether you're doing lunch or supper, those meals consist of 5 items, with each meal containing all 4 component groups: milk in the 8 ounce or 1 cup serving size, 2 fruit and or vegetable items equaling 3/4 of a cup, a grain or bread equaling a serving, and a meat alternate accounting for 2 ounces. And finally, let's look at the snack meal pattern. Snacks must include any 2 of the 4 component groups: milk in an 8 ounce serving size, fruit or vegetable at 3/4 of a cup, grains or breads at 1 serving, and meat alternate at 1 ounce. Keep in mind, if you are offering juice, you cannot offer juice and milk as a snack. That is not an allowable contribution. If you are, or combination, if you are offering juice, you need to choose something else that is not in a liquid form in order for those to count. Offer versus serve is allowable only for school sponsors. Offer versus serve allows students to decline a certain number of food components in the meal and select the foods they prefer to eat while reducing food cost and waste. SFSP sponsors have the option of implementing offer versus serve for breakfast, lunch, and supper only. Offer versus serve cannot be implemented with snacks. To implement offer versus serve at breakfast, SFSP menus must offer at least 4 food items from the 3 food components, and the children must select 3 food items to be compliant. At lunch and supper, to implement offer versus serve, the SFSP menus must offer all 4 food components, and children must select at least 3 of those food components. This is provided in one of the handouts that Jessica sent out ahead of time. So this is a great chart if you are implementing offer versus serve. We're also going to talk about meal service from a vendor. Meals can be prepared by the sponsor or purchased as a unitized meal that includes all the necessary components with or without milk included. Meals must be served during the approved meal times as indicated in your site application. If proper temperature holding equipment is not available at the site, vended meals cannot be delivered more than 1 hour before meal service. Be sure to communicate with the meal service staff to make sure the details in CNP in your application match the actual serving times that you are offering. Of course, we're going to be completing daily production records or delivery tickets, depending upon what is going to be used in each location. In order to receive reimbursement for meals claimed, it's necessary to provide production records or delivery tickets. These documents serve both the sites and the sponsors' documentation confirming that the required meal components were served. Production records and delivery tickets should include the full date, the meal prepared, the site name, and must clearly identify the meal components and quantities prepared. For schools that are SFSP sponsors, they have the option to use the NSLP or SBP meal pattern and production records. As a reminder, missing production records results in meals not being reimbursed and in some cases fiscal action being assessed. So if you don't learn anything else from this entire presentation, take away, you have to complete those production records because there is no proof of what you did if you don't have those production records. So let's go ahead and review production records and how to actually complete these records. So we're going to start at the top. This top portion is what we are planning to do. So per NSLP requirements, production records or delivery tickets are required for all meals claimed for reimbursement. The production record serves as the site and sponsors documentation confirming that the required meal components were served. The top portion should include the complete date, the meal type, whether it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, or snack, the sponsor and site name, the menu items, and serving sizes. It's important to note that this top part is what you're planning to serve for your menu that day, but it may not align with exactly what you actually serve for that day. So think of this as this is what I'm planning when I'm completing that top portion of the production record. Let's move on down to the lower section where we are going to document what the actual food items were that were served. We want to ensure that each food item is recorded under its corresponding meal component as outlined on the screen. So the food items used, we're going to put those under the meat alternate, the fruits and vegetables, the grains, breads, milk. And in the other section, be sure to record all your condiments. So if you're using ketchup or, I bet there's not a day you won't list ranch on there for some meal. We want to make sure we're recording those things because they're important as well. Moving on to the second column on this bottom part, once we have those food items put in under the right component, then we are going to list the product name or the commodity number if it is a commodity product. If you're using a standardized school recipe, you may list it as SR. If it has a number, that's great, or the name of it, because if we are out looking at your program, we will ask to see those standardized recipes so we can ensure compliance with what you're doing. In the third column, we're going to talk about, this is where you're going to put in the total amount you prepared. So this can be done by multiplying how many serving sizes how many meals you're planning to make. So for instance, let's say you're planning 3/4 of a cup of fruit and you're planning for 25 students, you can document that by putting in 3/4 of a cup times 25. So that will give you how many portions you are planning to serve. And that last column we're going to look at is your leftover amount. How much did you have left over after serving for the day? This is going to help you when you're determining how much food to prepare the next time this meal might come up. Or maybe it might be this is a certain day of the week and those are the busier days. It's going to help you be able to prepare for the next time you have to fill out that top portion of the production record when offering this same kind of meal. The delivery ticket is going to come into play as well as the production record if you have a vended site or if you're not preparing food on site if it's coming in from somewhere else. They're used as documentation for the site and the sponsor to ensure that all the necessary components were provided and that the quantities were adequate to feed the number of kids that you are. Each delivery ticket should include the delivery date, the meal type, the delivery time, and the temperature at delivery. It's important to note that meals, again, should not be delivered without holding equipment more than 1 hour before meal service. We certainly want to make sure that we're providing a free, safe meal. So let's take a look at a delivery ticket so we can look to see how this should be completed. So if you notice, it's going to, at the top, you're going to circle which meal type it is that you're doing. You're going to list the date that it's being delivered, the temperature that it was when it was delivered, and what time that was. That's very important. These are all essential HACCP components that must be included on every ticket. In this case, this school is sending a hot ham and cheese sandwich, a half cup of sliced peaches, a quarter cup of baby carrots, and milk. Would this qualify as a reimbursable meal? I say yes. I can't look at the chat right now, but I'm going to say yes, it does. Because if you look at this ticket, you have all of the components that you need, as well as that 3/4 cup of fruit or vegetable. Then we also have at the bottom, we're going to initial who received it and that they considered it complete when it was finished. So this is a complete delivery ticket for you to reference if you should need one. I think we got a quiz next. All right, which components are required to be served at breakfast? You can pop it in the chat. Oh, we've got great students on this group. So fluid milk, grain, and a fruit, vegetable, or a combination thereof are the components that we're looking at breakfast. So that's awesome. All right, I think we got one more question here. True or false? Production records must be completed at least weekly. Oh, I'm seeing lots of F's. And I'm seeing some dailies. So yes, they must be completed daily and per meal, because if you don't, we have no proof that that meal actually took place. I think we have one more fun little quiz. Okay, a site's approved meal service time is 11:30 until 12:15. 3 participants are waiting in the meal service line at 11:25. Should you begin meal service? Oh, look at that. Lots of no's. We would not start early. We've got to start at 11:30. And it's always a good idea to make sure that what was listed in your site application is what you are following and what is advertised to our communities, because we want to make sure that everybody gets there and gets a meal when they want to. So we've talked a little bit about production records and meal components, but we need to move on to how we credit those items that are part of that meal pattern. And the USDA's food buying guide is just a tremendous tool for all school food service operators. It's going to assist you in selecting the right amount of food to purchase, what's the most economical, and then determining specific contributions that each food makes towards the meal pattern. This is going to help you be able to figure out how many carrots are in a half a cup, or how many peaches is in a quarter of a cup, as in the last example. So this food buyer's guide, if you are not familiar with it, I would suggest logging on and learning more about all that it has to offer. It is a phenomenal tool. The other, in addition to the food buying guide, there's also what's called a CN label. It's a child nutrition label that is going to help you determine creditable amounts of food. If you want to hit the slide, Jessica, that would be great. Thank you. The child nutrition label and product formulation statements, those are the two other items that can help assist you in figuring out what is credible. CN labels are typically found on the outside of delivery boxes, and it's important to remember that any commercially prepared combination food without a CN label or a product formulation statement cannot be used in child nutrition programs. We have to know how to credit those ingredients that are in those products. So let's take a little deeper dive look at the child nutrition label. It can be easily identified. It always looks the same with the border around it. And it is a resource to help you determine how that food item meets the NSLP or SFSP meal pattern. The CN labels can be found on commercially prepared foods and also on any of the USDA commodity foods as well. If there is not a CN label on the box, you can ask your vendor for a product formulation statement. And that's the second thing that is on the screen here. This is going to provide the same information as a CN label, but it will be more detailed, and it shows how that food item is going to credit towards the meal pattern. As a reminder, if you're looking up crediting information on CN labels and product formulation statements, make sure you're putting those in a binder or a folder so they're easily accessible so that we can look at those when we come in. So let's look at that CN label a little bit closer. This one is indicating how it contributes. So this one says 3 fully cooked chicken patty fritters weighing 1.18 ounces each provides 2 meat alternate and 1 ounce of grain. So again, this would contribute to the meat alternate in a 2-ounce size, which is what we need for lunch. And then it's also contributing 1 ounce equivalent for grain. So anytime you use something like this, if it does not, again, have the CN label or a product formulation statement stating how it contributes, it cannot be used. So always be looking for those things. When you see those CN labels, people, I think, automatically assume that this is a healthy product. CN labels do not indicate that is healthy. It's just telling you simply how it is contributing to the meal pattern. Lots of CN labels are on processed meat alternate products, and they may not always be the best choice. So stay informed about products and always remember to look at that nutrition facts panel if you're looking for healthier items. Okay, so now we've talked about production records and crediting. Now we need to move on to how are we counting these meals? And we need to count these meals for children and for adults. So we've got a couple of different ways we're looking at this. If you'll flip the slide, Jessica, that'd be great. Okay. All meals submitted for reimbursement must include a daily meal count. This count should be recorded at the time of meal service, and only tally marks are allowed. Please refrain from making any other sort of mark on these forms. If you'll notice, if we go to, we've got a section at the top for students, and then we've got adults. So let's go, this is also on a handout that Jessica provided. If you go to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about adult. So the adult section is in the kind of in the middle there where it says adults, and they need to be recorded separately. The program adults are people that are adults that have a direct role in the meal prep. And so they can have a free meal, but they cannot be turned in for reimbursement. Non-program adults are adults that come to your program. They might be accompanying a student. They have no role in preparing the meal or being a part of the meal service, so they have to pay for their meal. So we want to make sure we're recording both of those. If you have a hybrid site, you've got to do separate meal count forms for both the congregate and the non-congregate meal types. So if you go to the next form, Jessica, it will show you that you're going to circle whether it's a congregate or non-congregate site. This count, again, should be only recorded at the time of meal service, and only tally marks are requested. And we'll get into that a little bit more on the next form. We're going to talk a little bit about rural non-congregate, but again, we're going to really cover that well here at the end of the presentation. So just know, if you're offering a unitized meal, you have to use this next form that Jessica will show. This is a non-congregate multi-day meal count form. It's going to be, you're going to be marking off the students as they're picking up meals, but they're going to be possibly picking up more than one meal at a time, showing a formula at the bottom so you can figure out how many meals you need to claim. This will be covered a little bit more in better detail as we talk about the rural non-congregate. Let's go to the next one. We're going to actually talk about meal counts. So when submitting your claim for reimbursement, remember there are different sections on here. The first section, again, is for students for first meals. There is a place for students to have a second meal. We want you to include all the first meals. The second meal can only 2% of the second meals can be claimed for reimbursement. And a second meal is it is not just an entree or just a grain or just a side. It has to be full components of all of those meals in order to count as a complete second meal. The next section, we're going to put in the adult meals, the program and the non-program adults. Those are not going to be included. Neither of those will be included in your claim for reimbursement. And then we'll put in your second full meals. This next slide is going to tell you a little bit more about that. We can't stress enough about complete second meals. We want to make sure that the students are getting a complete full meal first in order to get a second meal. The second meals can only be claimed at 2%. So second meals are discouraged. We want the kids taking that first meal, a full meal, so that it can be claimed for reimbursement. So if we go to the next form, this is going to show you how to complete it. When we say completing tally marks, we're talking about the first line in green. That top row with the green box is the correct way to do it. The red box with the line drawn through the 21st through the 35th is incorrect. Each number needs to be marked at one at a time as the staff member who's checking it off observes each child getting a meal with all the components. It's a violation of the program to mark the number of meals on this form before meals are served, as Jessica has talked about earlier. And you're not allowed to mark meals on this form that were sent on a field trip. That has to be put on a separate form because those need to be checked off as students are receiving those meals on their field trip. So we never want to see a line going through a whole bunch of meals. We want each individual student meal checked off. Additionally, you cannot count meals by using tray counts or clickers. You have to record them as they come through the line. I think and if you go through your first sheet and you run out of numbers to check off, go to a second sheet, a third sheet, as many as you need to be able to make sure that you can count each individual meal. Okay, so as a reminder, reimbursable meals must have a daily count sheet and all food components must be offered. Field trips must have their own daily meal count sheets that are completed on the field trip as the students are provided their full reimbursable meal. These records cannot be done before the meal nor after the meal. They must be completed at the point of meal service. It's important to indicate field trip on the form to remember that the regular open site must stay open for any student or child who may want to eat at the site that day who is not on the field trip. Production records must have information that reflects both the regular site meals and the field trip quantities. So let's say your on site is having a hot meal, but your field trip meals might be a cold sandwich. So you want to make sure you're recording all of those, both of the components that you're using. If you're going to take meals off site, you must have a point of service meal account form to complete at the time the child is presented with the reimbursable meal. It is no different than if they were going through the line where you're doing your on-site service. There's also some resources on our website, and Jessica has sent out a lot of that information ahead of time. Okay, let's move on to daycares. Daycares that participate in the CACFP can not also participate in SFSP. In a congregate setting for daycares that do not participate in CACFP, they must let staff know that they are a daycare and leave a contact person, the name of the daycare, and the number of children they're bringing, just so that we're aware of that. Participating in 2 programs at the same time is not allowed. We would consider that double dipping, and we want to make sure that we're taking advantage of a single program. As always, food safety is going to come into play no matter whether you're in-house or out on a field trip. All sites are required to have thermometers and temperature logs to track food temperatures. These logs help identify when corrective action is needed in food storage or holding temperatures, and we want to ensure that all food is stored at the proper temperature and discard items due to time temperature abuse. Additionally, all sites must have hand washing facilities for staff and ensure employees are trained on proper sanitation of surfaces and equipment. It's important to note that each site is visited by the local or state health department at least once to ensure that food safety measures and precautions are being followed at SFSP sites. So if you remember when we had the production record, we had a column for leftovers. And so we want to make sure that you plan. It's important to plan your production schedule or your meal orders to avoid excessive leftovers. We understand this can be challenging, and we encourage you to make your best effort to reduce food waste. Observing site participation patterns based on the days of the week or menu items available can help you identify more popular days and adjust your orders or quantities accordingly. A lot of times you might have a lighter day on a Friday going into a holiday weekend if families are traveling, or if you provide something that is a kid favorite, you might have more kids show up those days. So you want to make sure that you're not overproducing. But if you are, keep in mind that without proper holding equipment to maintain the temperature, leftover meals cannot be stored for the next day. You've got to have the equipment to hold over the leftovers, and please ensure that you have a plan in place to monitor the temperature and keep the food at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower if you're going to hold that food for the next day and reheat it. All right, now we're going to go into some program flexibilities. One of those flexibilities is a share table. A share table allows unopened, unused whole food items to be placed on a table for sharing with other SFSP participants who would like additional helpings of items. Some examples of allowable items would include fruits with thick, inedible peels such as oranges or bananas, or other commercially packaged ready-to-eat items, maybe like a fruit cup or individual crackers. As a reminder, no milk or dairy or temperature control for safety foods can be placed on a share table. For food safety, we want to make sure that if someone is picking something up, that they are safe in doing so. Unused, unopened items left on a share table may be placed back into safe storage for use the following day. Make sure to to follow all required health and food safety standards and to document the food temperatures, often through the process of preparation, holding, and service. At the end of meal service, document the items as leftovers, and you can return those items to inventory. Another flexibility is called the walking grain apple flexibility. This allows SFSP participants the option to take one fruit or grain item off-site to eat later. This non-perishable item can be from his or her own meal if a fruit, for example, has an edible skin. So maybe an apple, as the name indicates, or it could be from a sharing table, maybe a fruit with the inedible thick skin. Remember, it's not okay to share items that are opened or touched by other participants because this opens the door for food safety violation and risks foodborne illness. Be very careful and observant of your participants if your site chooses this flexibility. And this next slide will show you some examples of things that would be considered the walking grain or apple, things that would be okay to have on that for them to take. All right, next we're going to go into program costs. SFSP reimbursement money can be used to cover operating costs, including the cost of food, non-food supplies, space for food service, and the meals served to adults who are directly involved in the SFSP's meal service, such as adult volunteers or your paid staff. Remember that these adult meals or adult meals cannot be included in your claim. Program adults can receive the meal for free, but it cannot be claimed for reimbursement. All right, so we got another little quiz here. Is this allowable or not is it an allowable expense? Food purchased to prepare meals for children. Oh, look at those. Yes, 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 allowable. You are all so smart. All meals served to children should be used with that kids are getting should be paid for with the SFSP reimbursement. Okay, here's another one to test you. Is this an allowable purchase? Coffee purchased for food service staff to drink during breaks. Oh, I'm seeing lots of no's. You are correct. This is not allowable. Foods that are not used to serve students children are not allowed to be paid for with those funds. All right, let's keep going. How about, is this allowable? Transportation costs related to delivering meals to meal sites. Yes, look at all those yeses. You are correct. You would use the federal mileage rate if you are paying for mileage. So yes, that is an allowable cost. How about this one? Meals served to adults accompanying a child to a meal service. Oh, yes. Look at all the no's. You're correct. These meals, this is unallowable. These meals are not used to serve children and therefore not eligible to be paid using the SFSP reimbursement. Awesome. Okay, good job, everyone. So it's the responsibility of the SFSP sponsors to ensure that program funds are used only for allowable costs. Again, paying for food or meals. It could be paying a vendor or a food service management company and the staff in preparing the meals if you are using, if you're a vended site or if you contract with a food service management company. If sponsors end up with a surplus of funds at the end of the operating year, the money can be used in lots of ways. That money can be transferred to the NSLP or CACFP accounts for use there. It can be used for improving your operation. Maybe you can purchase some higher quality foods or more fresh fruits and vegetables or whole grains, or you could save it to use as startup funds for the following year SFSP program. It's important to note that state agencies will collect any excess funds that are not used. So let's look at unallowable costs in a little greater detail. SFSP reimbursement cannot be used to pay for excess meals ordered or prepared but not served. Again, this is emphasizing the importance of doing that planning and identifying the trends that are taking place during your program. Those days of the week that tend higher, or possibly those menu items that are kid favorites. Funds cannot be used to pay for meals that do not meet meal pattern or meals served outside or off-site of the approved meal times in your application. Finally, reimbursement funds cannot be used to pay for foods that are not used for meal service or as part of the unitized meal. As we showed on that one quiz, coffee would be a prime example of that. Reimbursement funds can also not be used to provide meals to adults who are not involved in food service. Those adults must pay for their meals, or the sponsor must have a funding source that will pay for those out of a non-federal fund. Reimbursement funds cannot be used to cover spoiled or damaged meals. So when you're looking at your financial record keeping, all sponsors must have internal controls and systems in place to ensure fiscal accountability. All expenses are incurred. You have to have integrity and be accountable for what you're spending, what those expenses are. Claims need to be processed accurately. Funds should be used for allowable expenses, and safeguards should be in place to detect and prevent improper activities. And again, all records need to be maintained for the current year and the 3 previous years. In looking at those adult meals that have to be paid for summer feeding 2026, adult meal prices are as follows. Breakfast is $3.25 and lunch is $5.50. Oh, sorry, I've got the wrong numbers here. $3.25 for breakfast and $5.75 for lunch. Again, the SFSP reimburses approved sponsors for serving meals that meet federal nutrition guidelines, and sponsors receive payments based on the number of meals that they serve. All meals are served free to eligible children at an open site. Compare the reimbursement you're estimating to receive based on meals served to expenses that you're going to incur in the program. These are the reimbursement rates listed on the chart that are going to help you figure out the cost of a meal and help you be able to recover those costs. As a reminder, meals served to non-food service adults must be charged those adult rates that we just talked about, the $3.25 for breakfast.
Susan, did we lose you? Okay. I'm not sure where Susan went. Can you all hear me okay?
Here I am.
There you
All
are.
of a sudden I was gone. I apologize. I'm not sure what happened. Which part did you lose me on?
You were just saying about the reimbursement, and then
okay.
Again, I think we just wanted to reiterate that the adult meal prices are breakfast would be $3.25 and lunch is $5.75.
Perfect. Okay. And then we were talking about the reimbursement rates. Okay, yes. And moving on to procurement. Perfect. Sorry, I'm not sure what happened. So regulations, again, found in 2 CFR Part 200 and 7 CFR Part 225 outline the three types of purchases: the micro purchase, the informal purchase, and the formal purchase. We're going to briefly cover the differences in these purchases. Sponsors are required to create and maintain a purchasing plan to ensure compliance with these regulations, and we'll cover creating a purchasing plan here going forward. Creating an effective purchasing plan for the summer feeding program involves these steps. You should plan your purchases by forecasting the meals with the number of new and returning sites. So you know how many sites that you're operating and what you need to purchase. You should plan your meals to meet the meal pattern through a cycle menu, and plan your orders based on the menu items and the number of meals and how often you order from the food vendors that you're getting your supplies and food through. You should solicit bids from vendors providing specific information, delivery schedules, what days you want deliveries, if you want local foods, and then payment due dates. That's going to help you in planning for your budgeting purposes. Okay. Effective procurement for the summer food service program involves selecting products that meet the site needs and appeal to children, which can lead to better participation and less waste. Procuring locally is always encouraged, though the definition of local can vary on factors such as geographic location and availability. When working with vendors, it's important to request that they include locally sourced meal items and clearly indicate the origins on the labels. Despite the focus on local procurement, it's crucial to maintain fair and open competition to ensure transparency and compliance with procurement regulations. Balancing these considerations can provide nutritious and appealing meals while supporting local economies and adhering to procurement standards. So let's talk about the three purchasing thresholds that we mentioned earlier. Micro purchases are likely one of the most common purchases that you will be using. Those are purchases that are under $10,000. There's no formal bidding required, and business is distributed equitably or spreading the wealth amongst all qualified suppliers. Informal purchases or purchases that are less than $250,000 are required to have 3 bids or price quotes. Do your best to price compare among the 3 qualified suppliers that can give you what you need, and be sure to maintain documentation and justification for the purchases. A formal purchase is a purchase that is over or $250,000 or greater and required a structured procurement process.
Okay, sorry, I just want to mention it's actually 350,000.
Oh, I'm sorry, I read the wrong number.
That's okay. It says it's correct on the screen. I just wanted to make sure that we made sure that was 350,000.
I apologize. 350,000. This begins with issuing the invitation for bid or going through a request for proposal process to outline the requirements and expectations clearly. Both of those, the IFB and RFP, require a public announcement of the procurement opportunity and ensures transparency and broad participation. The announcement should be distributed to multiple vendors to encourage competitive bidding. Following this, a formal bid opening is conducted to review all of the submissions, and an evaluation process then assesses the bids, with cost typically carrying the most weight to ensure fiscal responsibility. This thorough approach helps secure the best value while maintaining fairness and compliance with procurement regulations. And again, a formal purchase is greater than $350,000. This decision tree, what this slide is going to demonstrate, it's going to show you the informal, which is the micro purchase under 15,000, and the small purchase, and then the formal. And it's going to break out what the expectations are. When the value of the purchase is estimated over these thresholds, then formal procedures, including sealed bids and competitive proposals, apply. If your organization's threshold is more restrictive than what is on the screen, then you have to follow your own procurement process. All procurement procedures require documentation, how the solicitation was conducted, the responses received, and how responses were evaluated, awarded, and then monitoring of performance. Okay, so here we have a sample procurement. It's showing it on our website, and then it shows some standards on the screen. This is a helpful resource when it comes to identifying what to purchase and who to purchase from and who's responsive to your needs, and identifying as many specifics as you can to help you determine which supplier is best and for all the menu items you need in your program. You definitely want to take a look at geographical preference again, and you can assign more points to that, especially when looking at locally raised or agricultural products, things that are considered local. That's important, and you can add more points to that. The other part of this is we want to make sure that you need to utilize minority, small, and women-owned businesses when possible to provide items that you serve in SFSP. And keep in mind when you're making micro purchases or maybe other types of formal and informal purchases.
Okay, I think I'll take back over now. I was going to answer, there were a couple of questions in the chat that I was going to answer, and this was a ways back, but somebody mentioned that seconds would only be counted at congregate feedings, and that is true because you would not have seconds at a non-congregate feeding site because you wouldn't be offering seconds. Everything would be unitized in one meal per child. So that is correct. You would not be counting those. Let's see. The clickers, who asked this question? Leanne, I'm going to get back to you on that. I know there was some flexibility because of rural non-congregate, but I will read up on that in the regs and talk to Katie as well, and we will send clarification about the clickers. And then, as far as contacting the health inspector to come, no, you do not have to contact them yourselves. We have contracts with the health inspectors, and we will send out a list of all of the SFSP sites, and they will visit those sites that we determine are eligible for or that are operating this summer. Somebody was told a no share table squad last year. So it depends on your health department, and so while it is a flexibility that is allowed at SFSP, it may not be allowed by your health department in your county. So I would suggest contacting them and getting specifics about your county. Each county is a little bit different. And maybe that person might have been talking about milk specifically because we do not allow milk at the share tables. That might have been what they were specifically referring to, but I'm not sure in this instance. But I would say contact your local health department and follow their guidance with that. And I'm just going to do a quick scroll through just to see if there were any other questions that I could answer in the chat group. Somebody said, adult lunch, yes, it is $5.75. And then, okay. So I think that was just a personal message for somebody. Okay. So I think we're all caught up in the chat. As of now, if you have any questions, please feel free to continue just putting those in that chat, and we'll just continue to answer them as we go. Moving on, I wanted to mention the SFSP grant because I know that March 27th has already passed. And so, of course, this year's grant, the SFSP expansion grant, is closed. But I always like to include it in here because I want folks to know next year to continue to look for that grant. Typically, that comes out in March when we ask for applications. And this is a grant that can be an opportunity to use funds for non-recurring expenses. So maybe you want to start up a new non-congregate program at your school or your organization, and you need, coolers or Cambros or carts or something like that. That is what this grant is to be used for. It's an annual grant of up to $15,000. It's awarded on a competitive basis. There is kind of a lengthy but necessary application in order to get this approved. We have up to $90,000 a year to use towards this grant. So I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of it so that when it comes out next year, you can be thinking about maybe how you could use that or use these funds. But this year it is unfortunately closed already. All right. So in order to get credit or have a record for this training, I'm going to put this Google form in our chat, and I'm going to send this out. Give me 1 second here. Please let me know if you can see that form. You can click on that. Let's see. Yes, so please stay on if you have questions about hybrid feeding and congregate feeding, non-congregate feeding. It'll be in the non-congregate portion of the training. And can milk be on a share table as long as it's temperature controlled? That is a no. Milk is no longer allowed to be on a share table at all. And that was feedback we had received from Beth after she spoke with the health department. And so milk is not allowed to be on a share table. I would say if you have specific questions about that, contact Beth. She is going to be your best contact. She has the most up-to-date information. She's a great resource for all things food safety and HACCP. So Beth Haas is going to be your best contact there if you have specific questions about share tables. Okay, is anybody able to get on that Google form and complete that? Hopefully you can all see that. Oh, good. Okay, it looks like it's working and everybody's able to get on there. Great. Okay, so that will just be in our chat. And if you do not need to stick around for this non-congregate portion of the training, we so appreciate you being here. And we thank you for all your participation, the great questions that you all brought. And it was a great training. We appreciate you all and all the good work that you guys are doing. All right. I'm going to sit here for just a second just to make sure that those folks that are headed out, if they have any last minute questions, I just don't want to rush anybody. Thank you for filling out the attendance record and contact us if you have any questions, but I can move on to that rural non-congregate portion. All right, I'm not seeing any questions right now, so I'm going to go ahead and move on, but if you have specific questions, just go ahead and add those to the chat and I will come back to them as quickly as possible after this section. All right. So let's move on to this rural non-congregate portion of the training. So what is rural non-congregate? So this is meals that can be consumed off-site. They are still provided to eligible children ages 1 to 18 and from approved locations. Individual meals or bulk meals for up to 5 days at a time, and that's our state agency set parameter there. If you have questions about, I know we've allowed some flexibility for some shelf stable operations, allowing them 7 days, but please let us know. We can work with you on that. But for most folks, it's going to be 5 days at one time for those bulk meals. And then special prior approval is required to, oh, somebody needs this link, sorry. I'll put that back up again. There's the link. Special prior approval is required to utilize the non-congregate service option. And of course, that entails an integrity plan. And without prior approval of this integrity plan, reimbursement will be disallowed. And unfortunately, last year, guys, this did happen a couple times, and I hate to see that. So please, please, please get that integrity plan in as soon as possible. Get it submitted, and then you will receive a confirmation email from us that approves that integrity plan. And until you have that, do not serve meals because they will not be reimbursed. So I really want to stress that a lot this year because we did have some issues last year. So again, integrity plan, it is required for anyone operating a rural non-congregate. Whether you operated last year or not, you must have an approved integrity plan. And it is just a detailed survey. And it just details everything that's going on in your operation. It asks lots of questions so that we are aware of everything that's going on in that operation and ensuring, as we are supposed to, that all USDA guidance and integrity are upheld. Okay. So after, let's say that you have submitted that integrity plan, it was approved, you have gotten your application approved, and you're just serving meals, things are going great, but now you've had a little bit of change. That is okay. We understand that things happen and plans are going to change. Please resubmit a new integrity plan and email one of the program specialists and let us know that you have submitted a new plan, because we want to get in there. We want to review that. We want to get it approved as soon as possible for you so that you can get back to serving as right away. Okay. So just again, without that prior approval, reimbursement will be disallowed. Um, so how do I know my rural non-congregate eligibility? So of course you must be in a rural location, right? Because it's a rural non-congregate option. So you can access USDA's rural designation tool. And it's just a map that you can access. Let me see if I can get that put in the chat maybe. Yep. Okay. There's the rural designation tool. So that just what you can do is enter in your address. And of course, in Nebraska, most of us are rural. There are a few urban areas that do not qualify as rural, and therefore they are not allowed to operate the rural non-congregate option. But that is the map that you can put in your address and see if your site is in fact considered rural. Now, there are some locations that are near the urban locations that we are able to still consider rural. When you're looking at the map, all of the green sections or all of the green shaded areas are rural, and all of the gray shaded areas are not rural. They are considered urban. But there are some instances where, for this example, Waterloo is considered for our purposes, we would consider that rural, and so they would be allowed to operate a non-congregate site, even though, according to the map, it's saying that they are urban. So if you have any questions about your specific area, or if you're really close to an urban site and you're saying, but yeah, but our communities were really rural, you can let us know and we can work through those on a case-by-case basis. All right. So we talked a lot about open sites. We talked about closed enrolled and camps. Well, with rural non-congregate, there's actually one additional type of site, and that's called conditional. So with a conditional site, sponsors may operate a non-congregate site for children in a non-area eligible location. So what that means is that a site has entered their address. They are in fact rural, but they are not in an area of poverty, or what is considered poverty. So what can happen is you can operate a conditional site where you have non-congregate operation and you are reimbursed only for the meals served to children whose eligibility for the program meals is documented. So maybe you are using shared data with a school. So maybe you say, oh, we can serve all of the students that are free and reduced, that they had free and reduced meals at school. Or you can have them complete the free and reduced application for summer. And that's how you can document and ensure that you are just serving meals to those eligible children. Now, you may be saying, well, we don't want to just serve only those kiddos that are eligible, or excuse me, at our conditional site. That is fine. You are allowed to give meals to the other children that do not qualify for free and reduced. However, you will not be reimbursed for those meals. You would only be reimbursed for the ones for the free and reduced children, and you would need a different funding source for all of those other meals. So that's just something to remember, something to be thinking about when you're doing a conditional site. Again, providing meals to only children eligible to receive free or reduced meals, in the enrolled school children and other children in the same household, just the same as a school meal eligibility is, or you can do the meal application or direct certification match. Non-school sponsors have two options. So they can ask the household to complete the meal application, or they can do an MOU with the school to share information confidentially. So that would be just asking the school for the list of free and reduced students so that you could reach out to them and say, hey, we are going to have a conditional site. We can only serve this population. You qualify based on your free and reduced status at school, so we would be able to serve you free meals. A conditional site eligible roster. So you would verify that each child receiving the meals is eligible for free or reduced price meals. Again, either through information from a school, the application, some source. And then the meal application will probably have younger siblings included in the members of the household. So then they would all also be eligible. And then you would complete a new application if a change in household members and or income. You could also use the direct cert list, plus the benefit is extended to others in the household. So the reason we point this out in the conditional site is because sometimes there might be families where the school age child, maybe they live with mom during the school year, in a different location, and now they're with dad for the summer, and dad has other siblings in the household or something like that. So lots of things to think about when you're considering eligible sites, or excuse me, conditional sites, and using the eligibility rosters. Area eligible meal service methods. So you can do a grab and go pickup from an area eligible location. So you have entered the address into the USDA eligibility mapper and found an eligible site. And so you have folks just come, they drive through and they pick up their meals and off they go on their way. You can also do meal delivery to homes with children residing in eligible area. The thing about the home delivery is that you must have guardian signed consent to receive meals for children. Because of course, we want to make sure that these meals that are sitting out in the hot sun, we want to make sure that somebody's there to grab them right away, right? Because we've already discussed food safety. That's just as important in the summer as it is during the school year. So make sure that you have guardian signed consent. In a meal delivery system, you're going to want to have a very good communication system with those households and making sure, that they do in fact need meals for this week or these 3 days or whatnot. So you would have frequent communication with them, some sort of sign up system or call in system, texting, something would be happening there to ensure that you are not making meals that nobody's going to consume or delivering meals when no one's home, right? And then, of course, I talked about this a little bit. Meals can be provided for up to 5 days at a time. This is more of just a quality type situation. We think that after about 5 days, the meals are no longer real fresh. And of course, in the situation, you'd be using unitized meals or bulk meals. So there's a little bit of a difference between bulk or multi-day. So in the bulk situation, items in the non-congregate meal service are specific food items provided in a larger quantity than required for a single meal service. So you might be giving gallons or half gallons of milk instead of the little half pints. Or maybe you have sandwiches on the menu for 2 days and they have 3 kids in the household. So you give a loaf of bread instead of individual sandwiches that might get soggy after a couple of days or even after a day, right? And then multi-day meal issuance, which can also be combined with bulk, is non-congregate meal service when multiple days of meals are provided on one day. So again, it can either be unitized or bulk items. It kind of depends on how many days you're doing, what the meal items are, what your menu looks like. So just some common terms that we use a lot when we're talking about rural non-congregate. And if you have any specific questions about what can this look like for my operation, here's what I want to do, please reach out because we're happy to work through any of those and we can all brainstorm and figure out what's going to work best for your community and your operation. All right, some multiple meal considerations. Of course, like I talked about, food safety, you must meet state and local health and safety requirements. Storage requirements, you're going to be wanting to look at your operation as a whole. What cold storage capabilities do you have? What cold storage capabilities do families have? Maybe they can't store, 15 little half pints. Maybe it makes more sense to do half gallons of milk or something. Make sure that every item that you send out, that it has a discard date so that a sandwich doesn't get shoved to the back and then somebody's eating, week-old lunch meat that might not be the freshest, might not be safe to eat. So make sure you put discard dates on things. The other thing is instructions for children. So if you are sending out these bulk meals, you must identify what makes a meal. So you would say, yes, you included a loaf of bread and a half pound of meat and maybe sliced cheese, carrots, rounding out your meal, you still need to identify what is provided in the bag and what makes the meal. So you would say Monday, turkey sandwich, 2 slices of bread and, 2 slices of turkey, 1 slice of cheese, half a cup of carrots or 3/4 cup of carrots or whatever you're doing. You just want to make sure that the families can identify what is supposed to make a meal. You also want to include any preparation instructions. Of course, these must be simple because we don't want kiddos on an oven or a stovetop or handling knives, anything like that. So they've got to be very, very minimal preparation instructions for kiddos that might be home and handling these meals without an adult. Home delivery, I touched on this briefly, but again, signed guardian consent to receive meals for children. You need to be keeping at least a hard copy, an email, an electronic copy, so that when we come on site to look at your home delivery operation, you can easily grab those and we can see, yep, here are the addresses that they're serving to, and here is the signed guardian consent that they are receiving those meals. Someone, not necessarily a child, must be present to receive those meals at home delivery because meals cannot be left if no one accepts them. So if there is not someone there to grab that meal, you cannot leave it in the hot sun. Okay. So that's a huge piece when I talked about the communication, frequent communication, clear and open communication with these families and those folks if you choose to do home delivery. Again, contact information, you're going to need their contact information. You're going to need the delivery address, the number of eligible children in the household. You must have the names, the ages of the children in that household, and then the signature of the parent or guardian. We do have a sample or a template home delivery consent form that we're happy to send out. And everything that's highlighted in yellow on this form is where you would enter your specific things, like your own school's letterhead or, of course, name and address and contact and things like that. So we're happy to share this home delivery consent form that can be used as a template. It has all of the required components. And if you're wondering, do I need parental or guardian consent? We included this nifty little chart on whether or not, if you're doing just grab and go that's curbside, do you need public, and you're just doing a standard, SFSP public notification, do you need parental guardian consent? We've got yes and no's. Okay. And then daycares that that wish to participate in SFSP, if they are participating in CACFP, they cannot also receive a meal at an SFSP site. Double dipping or participating in 2 programs at the same time is not allowed. I think that Susan went through this a little bit as well. RNC sites, children attending non-CACFP daycares must be present to receive the meals. So if you are operating a rural non-congregate site and you have a daycare that comes in, first of all, they cannot be participating in CACFP. And secondly, they must have those children with them and they must walk through the line just like every other child that would come to that open site. And something that I want to point out about daycare providers with rural non-congregate is that daycare providers do not meet the definition of a guardian under USDA. So there will be no delivering of meals to daycares because the daycare providers do not meet that definition of a guardian. So they are not allowed to sign for guardian consent to receive those meals. And this is a huge integrity standpoint for the program. Okay. RNC site monitoring. If your RNC site has not operated RNC previously, it is considered a new site. So again, you'll be doing that pre-operational visit form. You'll be doing that 2-week visit form and the 4-week visit form, or the 4-week is annual site visit form, but it must be done within the first 4 weeks. So you'll be completing all of those site forms. There's lots of RNC resources. These can be found on our website. If you guys have any questions about where to find any of these things, USDA provided lots of guidance and memos, and they've done some Q&As that were all developed by USDA, so we can get all of those too. They are on our website though. This is the RNC section in CMP. So this is what that little portion of the site application will look like. So it starts on question 74. It's titled Non-Congregate Meal Service Operation. Do you plan to provide non-congregate meals at this site? Of course, you'll answer yes, no, or both. And if you're answering both, we assume that to be a hybrid site. And hybrid specifically means you are doing some non-congregate and some congregate. Now, does that mean you're allowed to serve non-congregate meals congregate meals in the cafeteria while other folks are taking meals out the door at the same time for the same meal? Absolutely not. That means if you have a congregate meal and you're serving a congregate meal, you are not at the same time for the same meal serving a non-congregate meal. You can do a congregate breakfast and then they take lunch to go, because those are two different meals at two different times. You could also do a congregate lunch and they take breakfast to go for the next day. But you are not allowed to do, in a hybrid situation, you are not allowed to do both meals at the same time for the same meal. And this section of CNP is where we will get all of those details. Do you plan to provide non-congregate meals at the location in a rural location? Yes. So then you'll check the days that the meals will be distributed. For this example, it's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Will multiple days of meals be provided? Yes, because they are only doing distribution on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. How many calendar days of meals are included? In this situation, it's 3. Which meals are given in bulk? They're giving breakfast and lunch in bulk in this example. Will meals be provided to parents or guardians? They answered no. So that means they have children only going through this site. Is this site providing home delivered meals? No again. And then that other non-congregate meal information, you'll detail everything there, and we will be following up to make sure that the details in the CMP application also match what you listed in your integrity plan, which will also match what we see in the field when we get on site. Okay. All right, so that wraps up this section of rural non-congregate. I'm happy to answer any questions. I hope I answered the questions about the hybrid site. I did include the attendance form again at the bottom here, just for anybody that needs it. Please, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to unmute and ask any questions that you might have, or drop them in the chat. I want to also give you one more wrap up with our non-disclosure statement. So, and with that, please let me know if you have any other questions or if there's anything else I can help out with. I'm happy to answer your questions via email as well, or you can give me a call. But otherwise, I appreciate all of you attending today.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Absolutely, please.
Okay, hold on. Let me go back here.
Okay.
So conditional site. So is that all the RNCs, or is that?
Yes, conditional sites only apply to non-congregates.
Okay, so in order to, let me see how to phrase this.
Okay.
The only children that would get the non-congregate are children that are eligible for free and reduced. Is that correct?
In a conditional situation or in an open site?
No, in a conditional.
In a conditional site, so that means that you are operating out of a site that is not area eligible.
Oh, never mind. Okay.
Okay.
I'm not confused anymore.
Okay.
10-4.
Perfect.
Good Lord.
That's okay. I appreciate the question.
Okay, I got it now.
Okay.
Jeez.
What else can I help with? I did have a question in the chat. How soon will we hear back after we have submitted our integrity plan? We will, after you've submitted your integrity plan, it will probably take us a week or two at least to get through that, because we also have to compare it to your CNP application. So you'll want to make sure that all of those things are submitted. They won't necessarily be approved. We would have to make sure that that integrity plan is ready to go and approved before we would approve that application in CNP. It'll probably take us a couple weeks to get through all of those because there are going to be several. Any other questions that I can help out with? Stop sharing my screen here so I can see everybody. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions coming through, but do you prefer we submit the integrity plan or the applications first? I would get to working on your integrity plan as soon as possible, just because it's a little bit more detailed. And then you should be able to take everything that you've compiled and listed in your integrity plan, and it should directly relate to what's going on in your application. Those should really match. So I would get them both approved, or submitted as quickly as possible, but they kind of align together pretty well. So is the integrity plan a form on CMP? No, it is not. It is a completely separate form. And if you received the email to register for this training, it is in that same email from March 17th that I sent. So if you registered for this training, then you have seen that integrity plan link and how to fill that out. Okay, good. I don't think I'm getting any other questions. You're welcome. Thanks, Sheila. Thanks for attending. We appreciate you. Thank you to everybody. We really appreciate you all attending this training. Please make sure you completed the attendance form, and then I will get a follow-up email that has the attendance certificate attached on that for everyone who completed that attendance form. All right. I'm going to stop the recording.